It's a Locked On crossover. I'm here with Locked On Hoosiers, Jacob Goins, talking both these teams 2 weeks into the college basketball season.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode in a crossover edition of Locked On Boilermakers. I'm your host, Nick Arvin, of course, with Locked On Boilermakers, but I'm joined today with Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. It's going to be a fun one. Thank you for joining us today on the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. So, Jacob, it's been about 2 weeks since we did one of these crossovers right before the season, I believe was our last one. And a lot have transpired. Both of our teams are still undefeated. And there were a couple games where maybe it was a little bit closer than we would have liked, but ultimately both of our squads are 4-0. And I want to ask you, obviously for Purdue, some big wins in there against Alabama. That's one that you can kind of hold. For you guys, what is that win? Is it Marquette? Is Marquette even going to be a good team this year? What can you kind of take away from the Hoosiers' start to this season?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it's really special that both of these teams have got off to a nice start. And look, the Purdue win on the road at Alabama, you and I were actually texting before it, during that game, and a little bit afterwards too, just about how big of a win that is, not just for Purdue, not just for the state of Indiana, but for the Big Ten Conference, right? To go on the road and take down one of the better teams the SEC has to offer for the last couple of years, and to do it on their floor in their house. That's a big deal. Not that I love to give credit to Purdue, but I think I have to in this situation. But yeah, I think for Indiana, easily it's the win over Marquette. And you were able to do that in Chicago. That was at the United Center in downtown Chicago, where you had a bunch of fans there. And it's no secret that Indiana basketball offensively is off to a fiery start. Now, the other night, not so much, but for the first 3 games, you scored 100 points twice. And Indiana basketball just hasn't been doing that the last several years, Nick. You and Purdue fans know that. So, yeah, easily it was the Marquette win. And it's just the way that Indiana looks, right? It's so much different. And this was the hope, but it's nice to see it on the floor for the first couple of times. But we also saw the first instance of, okay, well, if you don't go 50% from 3, yeah, you may not drop triple digits and you may have to win a rock fight, which is what Indiana did the other night. But man, I flip it back to you in Purdue and you're just rolling. I know there was a little bit of a scare before the Alabama game, but now you've got Trey Kaufman Renn back. You guys are rolling. Braden Smith is an incredible player. I mean, Purdue has got some serious dudes.
Yeah, you hit on it entirely. So against Oakland, Purdue, they didn't have TKR. He had a bit of a hip thing going on, and people judged Purdue for their performances in that game. Maybe it was valid, maybe it wasn't. They certainly didn't perform the way that you want them to, whether they have TKR or not. But what you have to realize is he is a very important factor to what Purdue wants to do. He is potentially an All-American this year. I think he deserves to be an All-American. And this week, after his performance against Alabama, after his performance against Akron, he was voted the AP Player of the Week. Braden Smith was named the Big Ten Player of the Week. So both of these guys really stepped up. And that's what you want, is you expect these seniors that have been here before to step up. And so far against Alabama, those guys really did. And the area that really kind of TKR especially shows up is the rebounding numbers. And going into this year, even last year, you wouldn't think of Trey Kaufman Renn as the best rebounding big in the nation. He's more of a scorer, but he's averaging 15 rebounds a game right now. Pair him up with Oscar Clough, who's averaging 10. And I mean, that's a dynamic duo where you struggle against Oakland. You tie them in the rebounding margin. Since then, in games against Alabama and Akron, you're up 43 in the rebounding margin. That is the number that sticks out to me for Purdue. And I think that Trey Kaufman Renn has really been the guy that has brought this team to where they want to be, although it still is early. And he's that guy. So for Indiana, who is that guy for the Hoosiers. I know that Tucker Devries, he's came in and been really good. Wilkerson is y'all's leading scorer right now.
Yep.
Who is a guy that you look to and say, this guy is going to bring us through the course of this year?
Yeah, those two in particular. And I'll say this too, man. Indiana fans are getting worried already when you start talking about Purdue's rebounding numbers because
Yeah.
Indiana's not a great rebounding team. The size is just not there. I mean, you've got Reed Bailey, Sam Alexis, but I mean, you're talking 6'7", 6'8", maybe 6'9" if they wear extra high sneakers, right? I mean, you're talking about some serious size problems for Indiana. But yes, it is Tucker DeVries. It is Lamar Wilkerson. And you're looking for somebody else right now because those guys can score. But when they're not hitting their shots, where does it come from? Where does the scoring come from? Who steps up and knocks down a shot? How do you get to the basket? How do you get those offensive rebounds and create extra possessions and extra shots? You know that's how basketball works. And that's how the great teams separate themselves. And so Indiana's looking for that right now. And I think guys like Tate Connerway are really big problems. I think in a good way, like for other teams. Trent Sisley could be a problem for teams. He's the freshman on this squad. And you're also trying to get healthy, right? Guys like Nick Dorn, Josiah Miles, and Alexa Ristic, like they're barely playing, if at all. So Indiana's not even 100% yet, and they're going to be one of the most electric offensive teams in the country. I tell Big Ten fans, I tell Purdue fans, I tell college basketball fans that this is a different looking Indiana team. When they're hot, nobody will beat them. But when they're not, you get results like we saw the other night where you had to come back and stave off a mediocre team because you couldn't hit shots from deep. So those guys are the ones to look out for. But here we are with two undefeated teams, Purdue being number one in the country and Indiana trying to start to stack the resume a little bit. And I know both of our squads have an opportunity to do that coming up over the next week or so.
Yeah, Baha Mar is going to be huge for Purdue as they travel there. I know that we're going to talk about that one in the next segment, but kind of going into this year, we talked about some players that are really going to carry these two programs. Someone that I thought would maybe be in that criteria, someone that I really thought was going to take a leap this year was Jakari Harris for the Boilermakers. He was someone in the exhibitions, and even last year, he started to get more confident in his three-point shot, started to get a little bit more consistent. I thought going into this year, he would kind of give Purdue that guy off the wing that they really desired. And so far, he really hasn't performed in the regular season. Had a couple good exhibitions, but he hasn't shot the ball well at all, shooting 22% from the field, only averaging 3.3 points a game. And that's kind of been the guy that he's been underwhelming. I want to see him take a jump. And although Purdue is 4-0, and that's all that you can ask for, I want to see him get better. Is there anyone for you guys, kind of the reverse of the previous question, where they're underwhelming? They need to get better if Indiana wants to reach their full potential.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think Reed Bailey is probably that answer. Sam Alexis, the Florida transfer, has played better than Reed Bailey, honestly, and he's been coming off the bench. Indiana really just playing one true big. So I think Reed Bailey's probably in that answer from a rebounding perspective, from an inside scoring presence, and honestly defensively as well. But Indiana's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. But when you start going up against these bigger teams in the Big Ten, like a Purdue, Indiana's just, look, you're not going to win the rebounding battle. You're not going to win the scoring battle in the paint. You're just going to have to shoot your way out of it, which that's a lot more fun than what we've seen in the past for Indiana basketball. So I would say Reed Bailey is probably the guy that if he can step up and start playing well, plus get some of these other guys on the floor that have barely seen time or not at all, I think Indiana's going to be just fine.
Both these teams are 4-0, but certainly some tough non-conference games coming up, and Feast Week is coming up. I know Purdue is in an MTE. You guys play Kansas State, so we'll talk about those games, what needs to happen for these teams to show up and get victories on Feast Week. We'll have that next on this Locked On Crossover. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head on over to FanDuel.com and sign up to play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
And it's one of our favorite weeks of It's one of the best weeks of the year in the college basketball season. Feast week is quickly approaching, and so many people talk about football on Thanksgiving week, and we will next week too with Indiana and Purdue on Black Friday, but it's the build-up and the lead-up to Thanksgiving and Black Friday and Rivalry Saturday with college basketball games galore, Nick. And our teams are in action, but not necessarily in all of the buzz, all of the hype with the Players Era tournament happening in Las Vegas and things like that. But you mentioned that Indiana has a couple of games. Purdue does as well. What are you looking for in these next couple of games for the Boilermakers with some interesting matchups on the schedule?
Yeah, so Purdue's going to travel on down to Baja Mar in the Bahamas. It's going to be their first time in that MTE. And I mean, anything can happen in the ballroom of Baja Mar. You know that as much randomness as there is in college basketball, these MTEs off location, maybe more so than anything else. So that certainly is a factor. But if you look back to Purdue's recent history, 4 years in a row, they have 4 consecutive championships in MTE events during Feast Week. So that's something that you carry into Baja Mar when you face off round 1 against Memphis. And that one is on Thursday. Kind of an early start to Feast Week, still considered, although not actually on Thanksgiving week. But this Thursday, we match up with Memphis, and a Memphis team that is struggling. They lost to UNLV the other day. Penny Hardaway, his team is really struggling right now. They have talent, but haven't really put it together. So that's your round 1 matchup. If you win that one, well, you got Texas Tech or Wake Forest. Texas Tech, okay. If they play Purdue, that may be a very, very big match. Certainly will be with JT Toppin, Trey Kaufman Renn matchup. That's one that you can preview and really get maybe an Elite 8 matchup, Final 4 matchup preview in November. That's going to be an exciting one. But just a lot of excitement in Baja Mar, a lot of excitement for Purdue. And this is going to be one that the Boilermakers want to win and get a couple really high quality wins on your belt in November to add to the Alabama win. Jacob, you guys face off against Kansas State. I guess you guys don't have a typical MTE event, but what do you see in Kansas State?
Yeah, we've got Lindenwood coming up on Thursday of this week. And then, Kansas State. It's one of those P4 games that Indiana scheduled because they weren't really participating in a traditional Feast Week game. And so it's actually Tuesday of Thanksgiving week. But what's cool is Kansas State is coming to Assembly Hall. And, there's a big argument going on right now in college basketball where coaches are not scheduling big games at home because the KenPom rankings and the net rankings and things like that, they don't reward you for playing these at home, and you get more props and you get more love, and you rise higher in these rankings for playing neutral site or on the road, and you borderline get punished for playing these games at home. If you win, it's like, oh, all right, well, that's what you were supposed to do. But God forbid you lose a big game at home because they just drop you like a rock. But shout out to Darren Devries and Indiana for getting Kansas State on the schedule. Not that Kansas State is a world beater of a team, okay? They're not the craziest thing in the world, but they are a big name. It's a good opponent and probably the second best team that you're going to play up to this point in the season. So you'll have an opportunity to get a nice win in front of the home fans. You'll take a couple of days off, and then Bethune-Cookman comes to town next weekend. That's after Thanksgiving, and that's a Bethune-Cookman team that took an SEC Auburn to the mat. I mean, they almost got that win on the road, and that's a tournament team at Bethune-Cookman. I've continued to say that. So that's what Indiana has coming up is Lindenwood, Kansas State, and Bethune-Cookman. And then, as you know, Big Ten play begins. A couple of those games are sprinkled in the schedule with Indiana going on the road to Minnesota to open up, still have games against Louisville and Kentucky in non-conference play, which I know we're going to get to our full non-con predictions here in just a little bit. But Indiana's got some interesting matchups, ones that I think they should win, but ones that I will have my eye on come Feast Week and then after Thanksgiving as well.
Yeah, so going into these matchups, going into this week, there's a lot of excitement, and there should be, because I think you said at the beginning of this episode, it truly is one of the most exciting weeks of
Yeah,
college
I love
basketball.
it.
Yeah. Do you think that there's any chance, and we'll get to our full predictions, but do you think there's any chance that Indiana, they're really hot right now, Purdue, really hot right now? Do you think there's any chance that they maybe underestimate one of these opponents on the schedule?
Yeah, it could happen. I think more so for Indiana, and I'm curious to hear on what you think about Purdue, which is how different these two teams operate,
Yeah.
especially on the offensive end of the floor. Right? For Indiana, I don't think it's necessarily underestimating a Lindenwood or a Kansas State or a Bethune-Cookman. I think if it's the offense kind of just crapping out like it did the other night. I mean, Incarnate Word had this down to a 5-point game with just a couple of minutes to play inside of Assembly Hall. Man, that's not cool. That's what happened under Mike Woodson, and that's not fun. You don't want that type of stress early in the season. So it wouldn't be necessarily underestimating an opponent, Nick. It would be more so of just not being able to hit your shots. And I don't love a team that lives and dies by the three, but so far early in the season, Indiana is that team, which is why you're going to have to find ways to score inside the arc. Can you hit mid-range jumpers? Can you hit backdoor cuts, which Indiana loves to do, and get some easy layups and easy dunks and try to draw the defense to one side of the floor, find an opening on the other? Like, that's what the Hoosiers have to do. So if that happens where you get cold from deep and you just can't hit anything, yeah, some of these games could absolutely be close. Back to you on Purdue. No way that Matt Painter lets his team overlook an opponent, right? It just seems like the ups and downs of Purdue basketball could happen here the next couple of weeks.
When you think about a Matt Painter ran program, you don't necessarily think about a team that's going to run you out of the gym. What you do think about is a team that's going to sit there for 40 minutes and throw punch after punch after punch and after punch. That's what he's built. And I think that honestly kind of brings you an identity that you're going to find a lot of success in games where maybe everyone throws out the term trap game. I don't know if there are a ton of trap games under Matt Painter because of what he's built, the ability to rebound the ball and control a game. That's what Purdue really has this year. And going back to Oakland, where Purdue, maybe they struggled towards the end of that game, they maintained control. A win is a win, but going into Alabama, they controlled that game. And a lot of that goes down to Braden Smith. A lot of it goes down to the rebounding, but it's because of the identity that Matt Painter's built here. It's because of the system of the team that he wants to build. I think that it's a good structure to go into these Feast Week events, to travel into the Bahamas and then play back to back and not necessarily have to worry about getting upset. I'm not saying that it won't happen. I know that Texas Tech will certainly give Purdue a fight if that matchup does happen, but against a Memphis, I'm not necessarily concerned about that one because I'm confident that Matt Painter is going to have those guys ready come Bahama time on Thursday.
Yeah, we're going to talk about here next our full non-con predictions. What will the Boilermakers do? What will the Hoosiers do? Including a couple of those Big Ten games that are sprinkled in there as well. We make those predictions and talk about that next on this Locked On Crossover. This Locked On crossover of Hoosiers and Boilermakers is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting on projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts fast for a project, Supply House has next day delivery. So you talk about a game changer, they have got you covered. Their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and a dedicated support line make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service.
Jacob, we've talked all episode long about these two programs, what they have, the players, well, the games that they've played so far. What we need to talk about is our predictions, where we see these teams going in non-conference. I'm sure that we will have more crossovers, plenty of them, to determine where these teams go the rest of the year. We'll be keeping up with it going into conference play. But right now, we're in the middle of non-conference. These games are getting exciting. These are some big matchups that are getting sprinkled in here, notably Baja Mar. And we can start there. We can start with your feast week. I guess we'll start with you just for the sake of conversation. Kansas State. We'll bring that one up. I believe Lindenwood, you guys have Thursday. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Lindenwood this Thursday, and then Kansas State next Tuesday. Yep.
Okay. We'll start with this week, this feast week. Do you think Indiana continues their streak of undefeated play? Do you think Darren Devries starts out his tenure in Bloomington 6-0?
He absolutely should. I mean, there's no excuse to lose those two games. I think you will see a good response from Indiana against Lindenwood just because of the poor play against Incarnate Word. That was Sunday evening inside of Assembly Hall. And this is a good stretch of games, 5 or 6 in a row inside of the hall. And so I think you'll see a good response on Thursday, against Lindenwood. And then I think you see a good game against Kansas State, but Indiana's more talented at almost every position. Not that the Wildcats don't have some dudes, but Indiana's just better. They're just a better team. They've got more offense. They have better defense. I think they're better coached. I think Indiana should not have an issue with that at all. And then the Bethune-Cookman game, I'm telling you, man, that is one that Indiana cannot overlook, and I don't think they will. So I think the Hoosiers will continue their undefeated streak. Now, for the entire non-conference schedule, no, which we'll get to in a moment, but I think it's fascinating, Nick, how there's a couple of games in the first 2 months of the season that Indiana and Purdue play the same opponent. I'm talking Minnesota early in Big Ten play, Marquette in non-con play, right? Those will give us a couple of examples and opportunities to indirectly compare Purdue and Indiana. I mean, I'll just throw this out there. Indiana beat Marquette 100-77. So if you guys don't pull that off, you're just not as good as the Hoosiers, is all I'm saying.
Well, let me ask you about that seriously, because there's been a lot of talk about Marquette and Shaka Smart, maybe that program not being what they have been in the past. And for scheduling Marquette this year for Purdue, that was a matchup where maybe preseason you look at that one and say, maybe this is one where Purdue loses their first non-conference game. Although it is at Mackey, I feel like those talks have completely shifted after Indiana plays Marquette. And now the conversation is this is an expected win, whereas in the past, playing Marquette has never really been an expected win. What do you think about that? Yeah. Do you think this is a Marquette team that really doesn't stack up to where they've been in the past?
I think they're talented, but yeah, I think comparing them to what they were in the past is probably not fair, because I don't think they are, right? I mean, they just lost to Maryland the other day. And yeah. I don't expect Maryland to be anything crazy in the Big Ten this year. I mean, they lose some really good talent off that squad. And that was, I believe that was a home game for Marquette that they lost to Maryland by 7. So that's a game that's concerning in terms of Marquette. They've got Oklahoma on that schedule. They travel to Wisconsin, to Purdue before they play and get into Big East play. So yeah, I hate to say it, but I don't think Marquette is as good as we were hoping they would be. But that was more about Indiana dropping 100 points inside of the United Center rather than, oh my God, you beat Marquette. What a crazy win. I expect Purdue to handle business in that one. No problem. But what about the other games that Purdue has in non-conference play outside of Feast Week, leading into some of those Big Ten games, wrapping up non-conference play, and then fully into Big Ten play? What are your expectations?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you in terms of Marquette. That's one of our home games that we schedule. We have a really crazy December home slate where we play Iowa State at home. That's on December 6th. That's going to be a fun game. And then the next Saturday, following Saturday, is Marquette at home. You follow that one up. Not a true home game, but in Indianapolis at Cambridge Fieldhouse. That one's against number 22 Auburn. And so 3 Saturdays in a row in Indiana. Awesome. You've got ranked matchup. Probably not going to be a ranked matchup against Marquette, but still definitely a marquee game that you look at. In terms of these games, Iowa State is the one that I look at and I say this team may give Purdue a little bit of trouble. I don't know if I'm confident enough saying that Purdue is going to lose in Mackey this early because they truly do. They play a lot better at home than they do on the road, and they already have a good road win this year, but I think their upside at home it's going to be huge because they really ride the momentum of that Mackey crowd. So I think that the Cyclones, they're going to be coming to a tough environment, but that's one where I look at and say, if Purdue, if they're not on their A game that day, I think that when Purdue's on their A game, they can beat anybody, but there is a chance that they aren't on their A game. And I think that if Iowa State, they play the way that they've been playing, maybe they have a chance at that one. Is there a game that you look at for the Hoosiers and say, this is one that I circle and say, this is going to be Indiana's first non-conference loss?
Well, I think it's Louisville, right? I mean, you play Louisville and Kentucky in non-conference play. Louisville is going to be, that is in Indianapolis. I believe that's at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And then Indiana has to go to Rupp Arena in Lexington to take on the Cats. Now, Mark Pope said the other day that he is not, he's not pleased with where his Kentucky team is. As we're recording this, they're playing Michigan State. So we'll see how that game goes. But he said he's not pleased with where they're at. He expected them to be further along, but I expect them to get up and be ready for a renewed rivalry between Indiana and Kentucky, part of a 4-year series for those 4 squads. And so I think the Louisville game will be really tough. I do. I think that's a solid Cardinals team who beat Kentucky just a week or so ago. If I had to pick, that's probably the first loss, but man, if Indiana could just get one, if you could pull off a win on either Louisville or Kentucky, that's good enough for me. Win the other games in non-conference play that you're supposed to. Start off Big Ten play nice with Minnesota and Penn State. And I think that's about as much as you could ask for Darren Devries in year 1 here in Bloomington.
In terms of my overall prediction for where Purdue goes in non-conference, I do think they're going to lose one. I think that they will lose a game in non-conference. I hear all the talk about Purdue's going to go undefeated in non-conference, and it's fair to say that they have the talent to do that, but it's also fair to say that it's hard to keep a team consistent throughout the course of 10 to 12 games of non-conference play. That's tough, especially with the amount of marquee games that you play. I think it's going to be tough to beat Purdue at home, but when you look at maybe playing Texas Tech back-to-back after flying out to the Bahamas in a ballroom, that's one where you look at and say, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the Boilermakers fall there. Iowa State, we talked about. I'm not doubting Purdue. I think that Purdue, they're definitely going to be the number 1 team in the nation through a good point of this year because they truly are talented. However, it's tough to go undefeated in college basketball. I don't think that should be the expectation for this Purdue team. I think the expectation should be continue to get better, even if that comes with a tough loss here or there. So I do think they lose one. I can't tell you for sure where that comes, but maybe look at Texas Tech on Friday if that matchup comes for you. Jacob, I guess we'll finish off the episode with your prediction. What's your overall outlook of where Indiana is in non-conference going into conference play?
Yeah, so far so good. Again, the offense has been very refreshing. It's been exciting. It's actually entertaining to watch Indiana basketball for the first time in several years. The defense will come around. I'm not worried about that. Rebounding will be an issue, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And you're 4-0, and the Darren Devries era has gotten off to a nice start, a fun start. Looking for some more wins here before Big Ten play gets here, because now that Feast Week is next week, Thanksgiving will be gone, December will fly by, and then Big Ten play gets ramped up fully. So so far so good for Indiana, and I'll let you plug Purdue and tell us what you think about them through 4 or 5 games, and then we'll be done.
Let's do it. Yep. I mean, I think we're going to be good. I think you're going to be good. Ultimately,
bold prediction, Mr. Arvin. Bold prediction that Purdue is going to be good. They're number 1 team in the country. Whatever. Whatever.
It's just tough because I really am under the impression that this rivalry is best when both of these teams are good. And as easy as it is to cheer against the Hoosiers, as easy as it is to say I want Indiana to lose to Kansas State, it's not fun. It's going to be fun when both of these teams are ranked going into Assembly Hall on a weekday or going into Mackey Arena on that Friday night game. That's what I want. So no matter what happens this year, it's tough for me to say this is going to happen because I just want to enjoy the ride. I want to enjoy this Purdue team because it is the last ride for these guys. It's going to be a fun year. And these programs, they're in different spots. It's kind of our last ride. It's kind of the start of something new for the Hoosiers. So differing perspective. It's going to be a fun year, and I really appreciate you joining me. Again, we definitely need to continue doing these crossovers. I think they're super fun. Thanks, Jacob.
Absolutely. Appreciate the time.
All right. If you just now seeing Jacob Goins, check him out on Locked On Hoosiers. Every single day, he's got your Hoosier content. If you guys are just now seeing me, check me out on Locked On Boilermakers, newer show, but we continue to bring you daily content of the Purdue Boilermakers. Thank you, guys, and thank you for joining us today on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, the #1